So now it's my great pleasure to introduce our speakers today. I'm going to go left to right here and start with Marianne Galante, KPMG's Executive Director of Resource Management Advisory. At KPMG, Marianne is the Resource and Talent Management Leader for the firm's $4 billion U.S. advisory practice, which consists of more than 10,000 consulting professionals. She is a seasoned executive with experience leading teams in various disciplines, including workforce optimization, resource and capacity planning, forecasting, and budgeting. Next, I'll move over to Sandra Buhler. Sandra is the Director of MUFG Union Bank's Contingent Workforce Management program. She has been in the contingent workforce space for more than 20 years, and in her current role as Director of Contingent Workforce and Search Firm Management for MUFG Union Bank, she received the company's Cultural Excellence Award, numerous SIA Game Changers Awards for creating comprehensive programs committed to transparency through benchmarking, fair treatment of suppliers, and ongoing development of an internal talent pool. She's also had an extremely impressive history with direct sourcing, so I'm really excited to share those details, but without giving too much away, I'm gonna let her talk for herself. We also have Miles Everson, MBO's Chief Executive Officer. I think many of you know Miles, but for those who do not, he joined MBO in 2019 after serving as Global Advisory and Consulting CEO for PricewaterhouseCoopers, where he led the company's Asia Pacific Americas advisory and consulting business. Miles spent almost 3 decades with PwC and also has a rich history of pioneering their direct sourcing program. So he'll be sharing a little bit about that as well as further executive insights today. And last, but certainly not least, our moderator today, Bob Lucas, MBO's Chief of Enterprise Solutions. He oversees all of our client relationships as well as sales for MBO's largest enterprise accounts, and he's been with the company for nearly 6 years and has a robust history of more than 25 in the contingent workforce and staffing spaces. Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you to start the panel. Thanks so much.
Thank you, McLean, and welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining today. Sandra, Marianne, I've got a few questions that I'd like to address for both of you. So, Sandra, I'll start with you. We see direct sourcing as a process and not just a one-time event where you stand up a program and it sort of runs on its own. I'd like for each of you to spend a few minutes detailing your company's history with direct sourcing, how long you've been doing it, what led you to the decision to create a direct sourcing program. So, Sandra, how did we get here?
Yeah, that was kind of a long road. It began as an idea on how we're always looking for ways. It's always about cost savings. Now, I'm part of human resources, talent acquisition, but I'm, of course, backed up by our procurement department. So what we were looking for is how do we get to find the best talent at the best price? And how can we accomplish this in a meaningful way? So we started the program out very small because it's a little hard for some people to understand what this program is and what it can produce, and then moved from having 18% of our population direct source to having 40% right now. So what drove us really is cost savings and procuring the right talent at the right price, and also having some flexibility with converting these people, because we were bringing in some top talent with this program and being able to convert them at any time during the project or assignment they were on, so they became an employee of our company. So it was a twofold. Attention getter was money savings. Second part is let's get that talent in the door, and let's start building up a talent pool for ourselves, and also to spread that name. Our brand is important, and for people to understand who we are. And so this is another thing that is a byproduct of direct sourcing for us.
Good. Marianne, same question to you. Where did you start on this journey? How long have you been doing it? And what was important to you at the very beginning?
So, Sandra, I definitely, a lot of your key themes resonate with us. Access to top talent definitely was a top driver. We started back, Bob, I was trying to look at my old email. So I think we started back in 2017. So about 4 years. And like Sandra said, we started slow. Our access to top talent really resonated with our advisory, KPMG advisory partners. Cost savings, absolutely. That was definitely a driver. We had been using multiple preferred suppliers at that time, and recognized that there was probably a cost. Well, there's a cost savings to that. There were some additional factors that went into play for us was to offset our full-time employees. We really want to offer our full-time professionals the opportunities to work on the types of roles and the jobs that they want to do so. And by creating talent pools by self-sourcing and creating another talent channel to offset our full-time employees allowed some flexibility with them. Definitely the ability to hire, right? I mean, that was, and quickly turn on a dime, so that try for buy, like I think Sandra, you were saying. And I guess a last one I was thinking about this, Bob, was like speed to market, because there's sometimes in our business like surge capacity, like many others, and having that flexible, having that self-sourced pool, having that pool of connected, almost like another arm that you have, gave us the ability to go to market quickly and surge when we needed to. So a lot of the same themes, but yeah, started out real slow, and it's grown.
So Marianne, to that point, as there's folks that might be watching this today, and they're thinking about this and how do they get started, what advice could you give them in the early days of planning this for their own organization?
Yeah. Again, so Bob and I talked yesterday just to prepare, and in talking with him, I remember saying exactly, like, it was like Field of Dreams, like, yeah, we will build it and they will come. And we built it and our partners didn't really come. So be patient. So be patient, because the change management is much larger than I anticipated. So lesson learned that there's a lot of change management. And when you're thinking about change management, it's really about what's in it for them, what's in it for your end user, and align your metrics with your end user's metrics. So you'll be successful if your users are successful. So as good of an idea as I would have thought, or Sandra, or our HR, recruiting, talent acquisition team thought it was, if your end user doesn't think it's that good of an idea, you will build it and they will not come. So change management is definitely something, Bob, I would say that we probably underestimated. And integration. I think that when we rolled out a couple of years ago, we had a bunch of different tools that were not integrated. So best intentions, we're going to get you somebody as soon as possible. We're going to build this self-sourcing talent pool and we're going to onboard them quickly. And we underestimated the multiple touches in getting someone onboarded from a self-sourced pool. And did not have our tools integrated. So we've worked on that, and that's actually made us much more efficient. So change management and integration with tools.
Sandra, what about you? Any particular advice for folks that are thinking about this today?
Yeah, you've got to be able to start the buzz. And where do you start the buzz? You have to get some really big wins. So part of our approach was to put our direct sourcers, and we have 2 direct sourcers, on the intake calls with our regular contingent workforce recruiters that call them out to the agencies and start talking about the talent and what they were going to do for them. It's taken a long time because they'll say, you know what, I wanted this as quick as possible. I don't want to wait. There's always a wait factor. But at this point in time, we have our hiring managers demanding we only use direct sourcing. That's the only thing they want to use. They're seeing better talent. So once we get one group that falls in love with us, and that's what you want to do, woo them in, the buzz starts. And now I'm starting to hear more people use it. Direct sourcing, can you get the direct sourcing team on? I don't even have enough direct sourcers right now to take care of the demand that I'm seeing. And then bottom line, we produced a $7 million save in 2021 for the company based on our direct sourcing model. And now I've got everybody jumping up and down. We're banking, so it's always the financials. always the financials. So you promise what the save's going to be at the beginning, and then you struggle to deliver it because you have to say to people, please give us a chance to, give you that talent that you're looking for. And then it just all of a sudden catches on. I mean, that's what it is. But it's not that it's not the best program to sell. It's just people are just going, well, can we just call the agency and take care of something? They just don't understand the way it works. But like I said, once it catches on fire, it catches on fire. People want it now, especially since financials are important and people are always looking about another way that they can save. So
yeah, I would definitely totally agree with your point, Sandra. I mean, what gets measured gets done. So you have to put out your metrics. They have to tie to what's important to your business owners. We ended up doing a bunch of client testimonial videos, to your point, because once it caught fire and those client testimonials told other groups, that started traction. And then the other thing, like we did when we first started, we weren't thinking that people were going to have so many questions and that they really did not understand it. We thought it was pretty self-explanatory. We were self-sourcing. But we put together a talk book. We put together, engagement help guides. Risk protocol. There was a bunch of, assets that we had to develop on the fly once we went live that we should have thought about way back when. When I come back to the whole change management thing, if I had to take a step back, Bob, I would have had a change management professional working with us at the same time. Because to your point, Sandra, like once the buzz happens, we have like 6 recruiters that are just doing self-sourcing, and we probably could have 12 recruiters that are doing self-sourcing.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause everybody here and just ask a really foundational question that's come in from the audience. And Bob, maybe we can direct this one to you. Can you give the MBO definition of direct sourcing? We had that asked from one of our participants.
Yeah, it's a great question, McLean, and thank you for whoever asked the question. There are a number of different definitions of direct sourcing, and each client will look at it a little bit differently. But essentially what we're enabling is our clients to build pools of contingent talent that they can reach out to for when they have projects directly, as opposed to going through their MSP or going through their staffing companies. So they're building pools of talent that have affinity to their brand. So, Sandra talked about it earlier, leveraging their brand to pull these folks into that pool and then being able to grab them when they need them. So now you're utilizing talent on a basis of utilization when they're needed, as opposed to sitting on a bench. So that's MBO's definition of direct sourcing, is when a client engages with talent directly as opposed through an agency. Miles, I'd like to tap you for a second.
Sure.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I was going to add on to what Bob just said. So if you think about it, for hundreds of years, companies have used full-time employees, FTEs. And then, I'll say in the early 80s, maybe late 70s, you started seeing the idea of contingent work. And I describe that as largely a transient, largely unknown workforce, not entirely, but largely. And then what direct sourcing is, in my mind, that the most successful programs is you're creating a knownness where the independent contractor knows the company and the company knows the independent contractor. Because it's kind of human nature, when you start to get to know each other, each other's cultures, the rhythms of how things operate, that you can get more successful outcomes. So really good direct sourcing programs end up recycling people that want to work with them and that they want to work with. So to me, that's a really big difference between just a direct sourcing of a transient workforce. You're actually getting to know these people, and they make you 2-3 projects a year with you.
Miles, if you go back to your days when you created the talent exchange at PwC, what were the drivers for you in the early days, and how did you get buy-in from the rest of the firm to say this is a path we want to go down?
Well, I think I'll steal a line from Sandra earlier, but that's kind of a long journey. But I initially got onto it I didn't know anything about contingent workers, to be perfectly candid. What I did know is two really important points. One is that our people weren't always as productive as what I would like. And so could I increase the productivity of the workforce? By the way, productive workforces tend to be happier, higher performing workforces as well. So there's that. And then the second piece was really getting after what I think is such an obvious point that gets overlooked quite often. You ask any CEO what her or his most important, most valuable asset is, and what's the answer? It's my people. It's our talent. The problem is the definition of my people has become has for a long time been my full-time employee base. But if you look at what's happening in the world, if you're under 45 in the United States, you'll change companies every 4.5 years. If you're under 35, you'll change every 18 months. So by definition, you have a relatively high turnover asset, i.e. my people. And so why would I not want to build strong organizational muscle to take advantage of as many people as possible? Because I viewed it as my people weren't just full-time employees. I needed a bigger pool of access. And so, Bob, you've heard me many times talk about the power of knowledge flows. The knowledge flows is where I'm tapping into as much brain power and cognitive horsepower as possible. I cannot do that by only relying on a full-time workforce. You have to go outside to a larger pool of people. By the way, some of the greatest innovations on the planet right now are coming from open source technology. That's a knowledge flow model. So I kind of view this more so today than when I started, to get after your question, more so today. This is so much bigger than any one company that if you choose not to change with the way modern business gets conducted between companies and the talent that produces results, you're just going to get left behind. And so, you know, the view has evolved over time, but that was a really key wave to kind of build once we got momentum started, is to say, well, gee, this is kind of blossoming into something more than what we ever envisioned.
Good. I actually, one of the questions that came into the chat room, I actually want to touch upon that. And this goes to the structure of your program. And the question is, it seems like both of you, Marianne and Sandra, have your own internal recruiters curating that pool of talent. Can both of you just share, how did you get to that decision? And why did you decide that you were going to have your own internal recruiters do that curation?
You want to go, Sandra, first?
Okay, I'll go first.
I'll go next one.
My own internal recruiters do not do direct sourcing. My direct sourcing recruiters are the only two that do the direct sourcing. What my recruiters do is that they do, because they work with the hiring managers, they introduce the program to the hiring managers, and then they bring the direct sourcers in, so the direct sourcers can start immediately making that connection and submitting talent. So I keep it separate, and there's a real reason for this, is because I cannot reduce, I don't want to reduce my dependency on staffing agencies, but there's absolutely no way I'm going to be at 100% direct sourcing. It just does not make any sense. So what I want to do is I want to keep a fine balance and keep my suppliers happy, because I need my suppliers to continue to want to submit to our bank first, the best talent. And then I need to also continue with a direct sourcing program, which benefits the bank and in so many ways. But this is where you have to make sure that you've got that balance going, because if you don't, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot at some point. So you have to keep the interest of the staffing agencies behind you, and then move forward with whatever goal you have for direct sourcing. And for us, I mean, if I can get to 45% of the current staff, I would be over the top excited about that. That would be huge.
Yeah, great points. A couple things around what we did with recruiting. Someone our recruiting org, so I'm affiliated, but I'm not recruiting. So I have a counterpart. He's my peer and we work closely together, and he oversees talent acquisition for my team. But we have dedicated talent acquisition for direct sourcing, and then we have dedicated for full-time. The skill sets, and he shared this with me once, and I think it was pretty on point. The skill set of our recruiting group that works with direct sourcing is wide. Wide net, talk to as many people as you can, connections, brand, get to know our brand. The skill set of our full-time talent acquisition recruiting group is to, funnel down all those candidates that have applied to specific positions and have a more focused conversation. So we've identified those recruiters that are more comfortable and have better aligned to the wide and the broad conversations to work with us on direct sourcing, and have a bunch of other recruiters, many more recruiters, focus on full-time hiring. Like Sandra, I know, Bob, you're going to ask us what I do different. Like, I think that, if I look back, we probably didn't do the best job with the staffing agencies, our preferred providers. And that's something that we've learned and that we have adjusted, because there's room for everybody. This is not I only do self-sourcing, exactly what Sandra said. You will not survive. You need to balance both. In my case, it's understanding what skills go to each. That continues to evolve. There's certain skills I absolutely send to our preferred providers. There's other skills I absolutely direct source because of our brand and because of the talent channels that we're building. We chose to do that. Why we chose to have our own recruiters is it was about brand. We wanted our internal recruiters to vet people that were interested in working with KPMG, to make sure that they understood us, we understood them, similar to what Miles was saying, that there was our relationship was tight, because we want to continue to use them. So we needed to make sure they understood the brand, and that's why we use our internal recruiters, but they are specific to direct sourcing.
Got it. Yeah, I'll just chime in for a second, Bob. One of the things that I've learned in this is that, and it's obvious again when you think about it, but the value proposition is very different from when a recruiter is, if they're recruiting for a full-time position, they're going to obviously be making an evaluation of skills, capabilities, but there also is an element of selling that occurs. And they're selling a career path with the company that is a longer duration career path, whereas the independent contractor that's out there is looking for the experiences they'll get, but they're not really looking for a company to run their career path for them. And so it's a different value proposition to the two buyers, if you will, because when I say buyers, it's the two talent that have different personal motivations, passions, interests, et cetera. And so that was one pivot that I think was really important for us, was you had to appreciate that it wasn't the same recruiting pitch that you would make to a full-time recruit.
Definitely. We learned that, Miles, for sure.
I want to quickly piggyback on what you, Marianne, and you, Miles, both said, as we had a question come in, and then Bob, give it back to you. George says that the brand affiliation of talent communities is appealing, but that there may also be an industry specialization, which basically means that people within a certain industry may work for multiple, even competitive clients. So he's curious how you guys think about confidentiality provisions for talent and how that's managed in practice as the resources may shift, going from places like KPMG to PwC and back and forth. We have this discussion a lot internally, so maybe Miles, you can start, and then Marianne and Sandra, you can chime in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. As McLean said, it is a common question. So the first thing is the expectations, the guidance, et cetera, is the same for an independent as it is for a full-time employee, both philosophically and contractually, about confidentiality and privacy. And so, one way that people have gotten over it, and it goes back to kind of a comment I made earlier about how transient the actual overall workforce is when you really look at it, because most companies, depending on the industry, will have somewhere 15 to 20% turnover between their voluntary and involuntary turnover. So you're turning over 20% of your people every year anyway. So you have the risk, if you will, from people working and then going somewhere else. That exists today. And so you obviously have to manage it, as I said, contractually and philosophically and culturally. But experience-wise, I haven't seen any bigger issue with privacy and confidentiality in the independent contractor world versus the full-time employee base. So, but Marianne and Sandra may have different views.
Yeah, I'll chime in. I mean, I think Miles is spot on, but I do think there's a perception. I don't know if Sandra, you felt this way when we tried to sell it to our, when we went live with it, we tried to sell it to our teams that the fact that an independent can work at our competitors or with some of our clients, that's a problem. Miles was spot on. I mean, we use the same confidentiality agreements that we would with, well, not exactly. We have similar confidentiality agreements, but they hit the same points that we would with our full-time employees. So it's a perception that was hard to overcome when we went live. I remember that a lot of people have that questions, and we brought MBO in to talk to our partners a lot about that. Because I do think that people out there wonder about it, but the professionals, the ICs that do work on our projects, sign those agreements, are fully aware of what they're doing and understanding of the confidentiality of working in a company, and take that to heart when they do the work for us.
Yeah, we have the same thing. We have this our COI agreement. We've extended that a little bit more to if they have any family, friends, anyone currently working at the bank that they know, want to make sure if there's what the relationship is. And because of our bank regulatory issues, it is an issue if they're working for another bank at the same time that they're working for our bank and they're sitting going through our book. So it goes to an outsourced vendor for them to look at the confidentiality agreement and then make a decision on which way they would go, whether that person should be coming into the company or not. We haven't had a whole lot of issues with this, but we're still really highly sensitive about it, especially since some of them may be sitting in the boardroom, and there's a lot of things that happen in that boardroom that we don't need to go outside the boardroom. So yeah, I mean, we've had some run-ins with the COI, but especially if they're related to somebody that, or they're related, or they're reputational issue. Another thing for us is reputational issues. But anyway, there hasn't been anything that has stopped us, but we make sure to put a lid on it. I mean, it's something that you have to be careful of. You just have to know, you just have to be able to have a good COI in place and have somebody that takes a look at who comes into the company, because ultimately you're going to be responsible if that person, something happens. Doesn't matter.
I'll address one of the questions that came in. Tamara says, just to clarify, are we simply bringing the third-party vendor function in-house? And I'll give my perspective, and Marianne and Sandra, you can chime in here. I think it's more than that, right? It's more than just bringing in the function of a staffing supplier in-house. I think this really is about building an affinity to your brand. And to Miles's point earlier, what's that level of knownness, if you will? How well do you know that that worker that you're going to engage? And then how do you then continue to re-engage that individual over and over? So I don't know that it's just bringing in certain third-party functions in-house. I think it goes beyond that. And if you two want to just chime in on there and give your thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely think it goes beyond. I mean, it could be that if that's what you want it to be, it could be that. But when we think about our CW, our independents and our talent, we'll just call them our talent channel over there, and we look at their skills, and it complements the skills of our FTEs. And when we look at the skills that we want to build with our FTEs, we want to make sure that our CW complements, and having them there as almost like an arm, and not having to go through that staffing firm, because you don't know you're always going to get them if you're working through multiple vendors. Like back to your question, it could be, but I think there could be so much more workforce optimization if you think about their skills and where you want to play with your ICs versus where you want to play with your staffing firms, and continuing to nurture that relationship with them and use them on engagements. They do become just a part of our delivery. So, I think it could be, but for us, it's more than that. And to do that, though, it takes a lot. I mean, it has to be thoughtful. You need to be connected with the business to understand what the business wants to get out of it and how the business wants to use them in order to deliver the results that you're looking for.
Yeah, it probably would be in our best interest, because we don't do this, is doing some type of an exit interview, even on our side, with the person before they leave, because what you want to do is, I don't know if they had a good experience when they were here. I've never seen the person. I've never talked. I do not even talk to any of our contingent labor. I never have a conversation with them. So that needs to be, the company needs to support these people when they come in and make it as good of experience as possible. So they want to come back and they start talking about us and bringing other people in. So that's part of that. It's them up to that manager. So we try and make the manager know that the person that they're getting is not coming from a staffing agency. This is a highly specialized person, or we spent a lot of time looking for this person. And so we want them to put a value on that person and that relationship so that they can be utilized again at the company.
I'm sorry, further to that, though, in agreement with Sandra saying, Bob, so we'll use, let's say someone's coming to an end of his or her assignment. So we have our PMO team connecting with other people that use that other end hiring managers that would be utilizing that skill. And they'll say, hey, Sandra's ending her assignment in 2 weeks. Her background is an SAP and she's an integrator and there's this and that. I know you needed somebody like this in a few weeks ago. Are you still looking? So there's that marketing to keep them working, to keep the stickiness. So it is viewed as just an extra arm of our team. We wouldn't be doing that with the staffing agency because we wouldn't know if the staffing agency would be having that person booked without us knowing. So it is, you got to keep it going, but you need a team to keep that going because it just won't happen on its own.
Marianne, you talked a little earlier about integrations, and one of the things that you didn't anticipate when you kicked the program off. Your program has expanded dramatically in the last couple of years. What did you learn along the way that got you to where you're at today that you didn't know up front, right? But how does your program look today different than what it did when we first started?
Yeah. Well, I think about the way that we staffed it initially. I had myself and a hiring manager. So now I have it's more of a triangle. I have a PMO that has 2 or 2.5 folks in it. We've got onboarding specialists because we have 3 of them, and we use them from MBO. And then we have 80 resource managers who are trained to sell the program. And then we have our recruiters underneath it that kind of, I think of the triangle. I have my RMs, I have my PMO, I have my onboarding, and then I have all my recruiters the recruiters underneath it that are supporting it. So, I mean, it is not, the full-time focus is on the PMO. The PMO has a full-time job. My resource managers staff full-time people. They make sure that our full-time employees have the best opportunities to go on jobs, but they also make sure that if there's roles open, that they're looking for a self-sourced candidate. So making sure that all of those groups were trained, educated, understand how the program works and the benefits to the end user were huge. So when we first started off, it was like, it was Mike and me in a box, and running around 24/7 to make sure that everybody showed up to work and that everyone had a laptop and shipping laptops to other states, making sure they got there on time. We underestimated it. So what I learned is that it is a full-time job, and to nurture the program and to succeed, you really need to nurture and dedicate and educate people. And that whole concept of integration, we weren't. And now that we are integrated, we're just more efficient. We're much more efficient. And, coming back and measuring and sharing those metrics with the business is huge. But staffing it up, don't underestimate that you need people to do this. It's not a part-time job.
Sandra, talk a little bit about, you talked about the cost savings that were delivered, but I would imagine that in order to get executive sponsorship and buy-in for the program, there had to be more to it than just dollars, right? So how did you get that executive sponsorship in the early days, and how has that evolved through the years that you've been doing this?
Well, what really started it was the fact that every time that we look for cost saving measures, it comes down to contingent labor, that they want that they're looking for more ways of cutting. And so it got to the point that they were cutting so deep into where our vendor's profit margin was that I said, okay, why would anybody no one's going to be interested in working here at the bank. We're not going to get, the agencies are going to get our positions, and you know what they're going to do with them? They're going to sit on them and they're going to go someplace else where they get paid more. So one of the selling points was just the fact is, yes, we can save money, and we can save money on those markups. And this is how we're going to be able to do it and still be able to get the talent in the door that we want. So I think they started to realize that we're not, because we're a huge bank, and as far as globally, we're a huge bank, but as far as a regional bank being known in the United States, MUFG is not a bank that everyone is familiar with unless you're worth $1 zillion and you do your banking with us. So so how do you attract? We're not a Google, and we're not a KPMG, and we're not a Bank of America where we have billions of dollars spent on contingent labor. But we do need top talent. And we do need to also produce savings along with that. And I mean, that's how we did it. We just took a look at the whole, they just took a look at the whole thing, and they started saying, oh, okay, well, now this makes sense if it works. Harder to get them to put head count behind it. It's always hard for me to get head count. So I have a kind of I have a hybrid program. I've got more than just the direct sourcing. I do have a small MSP here too. But what I'm trying to do right now is build more interest across the bank. And unfortunately, I don't have as many people as you do, Marianne. I've got a very, very small group that does this. So that we've come this far is actually a really big deal.
Yeah.
But it's a formula, by the way, for everybody. It's a formula. It's like putting a recipe together. So what you're hearing today are some very important ingredients and what need to go into this to make it a successful program based on people that have had to, start it, restart it, and sell it at least 10 different times, top down.
So I want to address two questions that have come in, and I think I can hit them both. Tom and Justin, you asked questions around, third-party providers from a compliance perspective. Or we talk about independent contractors, but are we truly talking about just independent contractors, or do you use an agency to payroll them? So I think if you joined early, you heard McLean talk about, well, that's what MBO does, right? So our role in this is we're here to take friction out of that process. So whether it is the onboarding process, engaging the individuals compliantly based upon how they're paid, based upon the Department of Labor or the IRS, that's both MUFG and KPMG is engaged with us in order to do that on their behalf. So our role in their direct sourcing program is we're the engine behind the scenes that ensures that everyone gets onboarded compliantly and is paid properly at the end of the day. Okay.
Hey, Bob, I think on Justin's question, we've been using the term independent contractor in a generalist term, not in a technical term. So you could substitute contingent worker. For what you're asking, Justin. And then direct sourcing programs absolutely can end up with people that go as a payrollee with a payroll company, that's again what Bob said, that's part of what we do. Because the first thing for most companies is to make sure that they got access to the talent, and then it's, do I have properly classified talent so I'm compliant with laws and regs, and then all that handling gets done after that determination is made.
Miles, I got a question for you, just based on your experience and where you've seen the industry go. What do you see as the future of direct sourcing for enterprises? Where do you think this ultimately goes?
Yeah, so the first thing I guess that I think about with that question, Bob, is not just what does a company think they're going to do, but what are the market drivers? And one of the primary market drivers is that increasingly very talented, high quality people are choosing to be independent. I mean, if you go back a decade and you ask somebody that you met that was an independent contractor, your first question is, well, what did you do before you got laid off? That is not the case anymore. Increasingly, people have decided to be independent contractors by choice. And so when you think about that, and they're in the world, most companies would say they have too many employees, but not enough of the right skills. So if you have a hot skill, you have scarcity playing in your favor. And so being an independent contractor is great for you because you get to choose where you work, who you work with. You're not kind of beholden to one structure. And so there's really, in my opinion, there's really no choice but for companies to tap into it. And then on the company side, when you start to look at the access to talent thing that I talked about earlier, which I won't repeat kind of the whole message on that, but there's that. But then the other piece is we all know that the rate of change is accelerating. And any effective business management team should be stepping back and saying, can I adjust my cost structure at the same volatility that I think my revenue could have, up and down, so that I can adjust as quickly as possible for agility purposes? And the way you do that is to have an extended workforce through a direct sourcing program that knows you, you know them, so that you can quickly deploy. And so there's a, as the world changes, right? We've seen with remote work in the last year, obviously people are more comfortable working remotely today than they were 15 months ago. And it's changing. I just saw something yesterday that makes a really compelling argument that the global wage for white collar workers is going to get flattened because people in low income countries now can access work in largely Western generated demand. And so you'll see a flattening. Now, the problem is it's creating problems for countries like India because some of the locally, domestic India companies can no longer afford to hire great talent because they're all going to Western companies. So there's a dramatic shift in the workforce composition, and it's being driven by both the talent needs and expectations as well as the enterprise needs.
As a follow-on to that, Marianne, from your perspective, we see direct sourcing as one step in the journey for true workforce optimization. How far do you see yourself in that journey? And, what are some of the things that you're looking at on how to further optimize the workforce in total at KPMG?
Yeah, so constantly learning. I mean, everything that Miles said, amen. I mean, yes, the workforce is changing. It's rapidly changing. The rate of acceleration is faster and faster. So when we're looking at our advisory professionals, we kind of bucket them in different talent channels, right? So direct sourcing is one talent channel. Our FTEs are a talent channel. When we work with our offshore team, like we have offshore centers, it's a talent channel. Our onshore delivery center, it's a different talent channel. What we're doing and what we're finding is that we're constantly evolving the different channels, working with our business partners. So we go back to the business and say, hey, Bob, you run X business. Your talent composition looks like this today. You have, Miles' favorite, 60-30-10. You have 60% onshore, you have 30% offshore, and you got 10%, self-sourcing. Is that right? How profitable are you? And measuring the profitability and how each channel can help you is that ongoing dialogue that we're just starting to have with the business. So that's it. That has changed dramatically, I'd say, Bob, in the last 6 months. Like since everything, maybe a year with the pandemic, all of that has accelerated those conversations, because we know now we can do direct sourcing. We know people can work remote. So the way that we're looking at talent has changed. We're constantly changing with it. Honestly, Bob, I feel like I learn something new every day, and getting our folks and educating our folks to come with us on this journey it's sticking. It's happening. We definitely have found that our teams are interested in the conversation.
So was it a combination of, outside forces and what your program has been doing for the last 4 years that
totally
got people
the outside
to this
definitely
place?
The outside sources and the war for talent, as everybody says, is paramount to all of this. Everybody's looking for the same skilled resource. And Miles is right. People know they can be IC, they can be independents and make a living and do really well. So that has all accelerated, which has really moved our program.
Sandra, how about you? You mentioned earlier that, today you have hiring managers demanding that it's somebody from your direct sourcing program as opposed to another channel. How'd you get there? How did those folks buy in and look at things a little bit differently through the years beyond just the cost savings?
Well, there were two ways. One is that when they were comparing the candidates they got from the agencies to the candidates that came in through direct sourcing, the feedback was direct sourcing brought in a better candidate. In fact, one of the managers even had their own referral they were bringing in for a project. And we said, can you just take a look at who we found? And they hired who we found. Okay, so that all of a sudden people are going, I can't believe it. And the other thing is that, hi, we are going to do another SOW. We're not going to use contingent labor, and because we need to have these specialized skills. And because we have such a huge approval process on every dime that we spend, we said, okay, this would be an exception for you to go out like this. So let us see what we can find. And then we brought in the talent, and they ended up hiring and saying, I can't believe it. I've saved a ton of money and I got exactly what I was looking for. So you have to have something behind it. I mean, you can't just talk about the program and not deliver on the program. You have to deliver some superstars. And I think those superstars that you can bring in are what keep that program alive and going. And I mean, we're going global now too. So when we're going global, the reason that it's going to end up being one HR, and as we go global, our other areas that we're talking to, this will be the model that they're going to be using. They'll be using our policies. They'll be looking at direct sourcing. They're going to look at us basically managing how contingent labor, how they're going to be running their contingent labor area, just because I can tell you, because direct sourcing is the star. And the reason it's the star is because we did it ourselves. There wasn't a staffing agency. There wasn't anything. We did it ourselves. So that's another byproduct of having a direct sourcing. It's really difficult to get it like first going, but once you have it going, man, it's a super program.
Hey, Bob, I think we need another webinar on global. Cassandra, I would like to talk to you about global. Going direct sourcing global.
I mean, that's total. Yeah, maybe
it's
come back, ladies.
Yeah,
Yes, indeed.
Because I don't know anything about that. That would be a good one.
Marianne, how do you measure success? What are some of the metrics you capture?
We look at so there's always dollars, right? We have savings. There's looking at the savings, but then we look at penetration as well. And we're looking at we're trying to tie some of the other metrics that we've been talking about back to our partner metrics, but in terms of penetration, like what % of your workforce is delivered direct, through our direct sourcing program versus your full-time versus our offshore. And then we've been measuring that year over year, and that's where we've seen success because our numbers are going up. And then when we look at, the profitability and the gross margin's going up on those engagements. So it's about the bottom line. Sandra, you talked about that a couple times. For us, it's about gross margin. And penetration, Bob.
At this point, McLean, if we want to open it up to further questions, see if anybody's got any other questions out there.
Excellent. I do see one that came in from Tamara about diversity and the impact on diversity from direct sourcing programs. I think that's an interesting one, particularly as we talked about DEI in our March series. So for those of you who are interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's a great one to take a look at. But I'll open it up and ask the question, have you been able to impact diversity through your direct sourcing programs to get us started? Would ever like to chime in?
Absolutely a goal of ours, but have we succeeded? No. I mean, it's something that I attend other webinars to learn more about and how to do it, because I think we want to do it, but it has been a tough nut to crack, and measuring that and how you measure that. I've talked to a couple different vendors about that. So I'm sorry, I don't have a lot to say about it, but I wish I did. I don't know about you, Sandra.
Yeah, we made it a big deal for ourselves. I mean, all of our vendors this year had to report on how they're recruiting. So now you get that. Now what about MBO? Because they're not recruiting for you, really. They're in a lot of ways, we're sending people to them. Right. It's kind of it's with the staffing agency. That's one relationship with the service that is more of the payroll service for you. But we still track it. We still know that our recruiters are involved with this, and there is, and your MBO would be able to say how they identify the workforce that's working for them, because they should be letting us know what are we seeing, because our recruiters are supposed to make sure that they tap into the networks that will help them get more diverse candidates, whether it be more women. I mean, right now, women in technology, we need more women in technology. That's an easy one as far as a diverse workforce to look at. And then in some of our other areas, with whether Hispanic or, African-American, where are we going out to find them? So your recruiters need to be in that space. That's where they need to be networking.
That's a great point, Sandra. Thank you. And I would encourage those who are interested in this topic to look at our March discussion. It is posted on the MBO events page as well. We only have time for one more question, and I'm selfishly going to ask the question about how to keep direct sourcing talent engaged when they're not working. I know, Marianne, you touched on this a little bit, but it's a nice lead in. Our next series following this one is going to be on building a culture of community and a talent forward brand on May 13th, same time, 2 p.m. We'll put a link in our next one, but I think this is a great one to end on, as it's very pertinent to this overall issue. So I'll open that up to the group, and then we'll close it out.
One of the things that we've engaged our partners, so our client teams, our partners, to do is to host their own webinars on skill-specific topics or industry-specific topics. And we brought that to our self-source team. So, hey, we have something going on right now about, industry trends in automotive or something. So we specifically marketed that to our self-sourced, our talent channels, our talent pool, to get them involved. I would say when we first kicked this off, Bob, we used to do a lot of welcome calls, connecting calls. We probably need to get better at that, but we found that our engagement teams stay connected with the talent themselves. And so that has allowed our resource managers not to have to do a lot of that pull themselves. So offering the webinars on topics that our self-sourced pools interested in, the RM team staying connected with them 2 ways, but we have found that the webinars are the most interesting to our talent pools.
Thanks so much, Marianne. Sandra, do you have anything to add there?
No, I just count on them wanting to come back and want to stay within the group. That's it. So, and I know that there's more work that can be done in that, but it does take probably a larger team than what I have to follow up on all of that. So, yeah. So we've heard some good ideas today on things to do. I'm learning too, right along with this. This has been great.
Excellent. Well, I can tell by the questions, I'm sorry if we didn't get to everybody's. We have definitely enough questions and meat for a part 2 later this year. So those who are interested, stay tuned. This is not the last you'll hear from MBO on this subject. Thank you, Marianne, Sandra, Bob, Miles, for your time today. Bob, any last words to close us out?
No, I hope all of you that joined found this beneficial. Special thank you to Marianne and Sandra, and we'll see you on our next series. Have a good afternoon.
Guys. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Very
much.
good. Thanks, folks.